Chapter 1.
So, this is the first chapter of... No, it's not really a what? Recording?
What?
It's not an
What are you trying
episode.
Oh, I see, like the first segment of the MBBC.
Okay, so this is
Um,
the first meeting, I guess, of the Minty Boys Book Club.
Yep, you'll wear a blindfold, put one hand on the Bible, and swear an oath to the MBBC.
Right. No association with the BBC. Please do not sue.
No,
Uh,
you're not. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
No copyright
right,
intended.
copyright not intended. Moving right along. I hope everyone at home did their reading. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Chapter 1.
So, yeah, how did you find Chapter 1?
Good. I don't know. Might be the problem with this whole thing is I have a hard time explaining my general feelings about things. Like if you ask me specifically about parts, I could tell you more, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the way Douglas Adams writes things.
Yeah,
Like the narrator voice is strong.
Yeah, you always read some of the sentences in your head quite sarcastic, I guess. The way he writes, you can kind of. I don't know what that is about it, but it's you can kind of tell it's a humorous book, I guess, or
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something about the style it's written in and the choice of words. But yeah, it's I think the first chapter is quite good at setting up the whole rest of the book. Because it establishes Arthur Dent quite well.
And Ford Prefect.
With the whole, and it kind of sets up how I guess Arthur is a bit of a the example of how he moved away from London because it made him quote nervous and irritable.
Right.
Because it just shows you that what type of person he is, and because it's quite it's quite good at that, and also Ford find it also sets up Ford quite well of showing him just being I guess I don't know, I kind of read it as if he didn't really have an idea what was going on Earth, he was kind of oblivious to everything that was happening around him.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole conflict of the house being bulldozed, he was well, what's the problem? I don't see the issue. You just what? Just let him do what he wants. It's no, do you not understand the significance of the situation?
This is my house. I don't want it to be bulldozed. But
it's quite good at
yeah. It's interesting that they most of his character is introduced through the narration. Arthur doesn't actually know.
Yeah.
In chapter 1, he doesn't know that he's not from Earth and stuff. But it explains all of that through the narration, explaining that he's from Beetlejuice and stuff.
Yeah. It's quite good. It's but I also throughout the first chapter, for Mr. Prosser, to kind of poke fun at the character, they will just throughout the text or the book, they will just compare him to Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
His great grandfather, which is quite funny.
That's another thing where it's that's entirely in the narration. It's at no point are any of the characters aware that he's distantly related to Genghis Khan. It
does show some of the wit in the text, and it kind of shows, I guess, the type of humor the book is going for, because it's kind of belittling Mr. Prosser, but at the same time doing it in a, I guess like it's not like a, I don't know. I guess it's like a narration that's kind of trying to make you laugh, but at the same time trying to make sure you know that he is the not good. Pretty much.
Yeah, he's like he's stressing out and like having visions of like horses and battles and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just not really understanding and clearly like out of his steps as far as like rank.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a bork.
Oof.
Yeah, it's also good at setting up the humor of the book, I guess. Like, I did like some of the jokes of the when he was talking about where he could have found out about these plans, and it was, oh yeah, they were perfectly on display, and it was, yes, on display in the bottom of a filing cabinet in an unused lavatory with a sign on the door saying "Beware of leopard."
Filing cabinet.
Yeah,
I feel like if anything's locked, it's not really on display, then, is it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it kind of, the text goes out of its way to like show how like against Arthur this whole situation is. Yeah. And it's quite humorous. I did like the whole like paragraph dedicated to talking about point A, what a bypass was, and saying like the point A to point B very fast. And then people were living at point C, which is directly in between. And then I think, was it point D? Yeah, point D where Mr. Prosser wanted to be.
Right.
It was just like a house. And then there was like point E, which is the local nearby pub. Which was quite funny as well.
Right. Yeah, that does kind of capture the style that like the narration is in, because it's in the form of like almost like an encyclopedia, or like a like math formula with like point A, point B.
Yeah. Which I guess like isn't.
It's like not, but it's also like clearly not written too seriously. It's like very matter of fact.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he did. Yeah. Little did he know he was, a direct male lineage to Genghis Khan. But then it like kind of goes in like silly directions.
Yeah, it's also, I like the, as well, with paragraphs describing weird things. There's the large paragraph describing the drinking game they play.
Oh yeah.
With Old Jank Spirit, where you just stare at a bottle and wait for it to pour into your opponent's glass.
Yeah, you're supposed to like lift it with your mind or something.
Yeah, and then
you have to drink whatever gets poured into your glass.
Yeah,
which then makes it harder.
But then it's just like
to do.
Yeah, but then it turns out that Ford just ends up playing it to lose.
Yeah, he does.
Which is,
I was gonna say this earlier. He does seem to get drunk a lot for someone who's supposed to be researching.
Yeah, he does quite like his drink. Yeah. Yeah. Another quite funny thing was like the background conflict of the demolition people, like trying to get hazard pay for Arthur lying down, and Mr. Prosser having to deal with like all that, and then like they get, what is it, like a union, but yeah, they get in, like there's this whole like background conflict of the workers trying to get pay for Arthur lying down, and then I think, isn't there a point where they get like a official person to discuss this with Mr. Prosser, which is quite funny.
Yeah, I think.
Towards
the end
Mr.
of that
Prosser,
scene,
who was arguing.
Like, did you have the bit?
Mr. Prosser, who was arguing with the spokesman for the bulldozer drivers about whether or not Arthur Dent constituted a mental health hazard, and how much they should get paid if he did.
Yeah, and
which is quite funny.
And by the end, after Ford talks to him, he's lying down in front of the bulldozer.
He manages to convince him just to lie down.
And he's trying to figure out if he's now a mental health hazard. He's clearly not a very smart man.
No. Yeah, and Ford does seem to be quite good at persuading people, I guess. Being from a advanced alien race does, I guess, might help with that. It kind of does show, like, also kind of demeans Mr. Prosser in the process, which is also quite funny. As it shows again, like, how we shouldn't really stick up for Mr. Prosser, and Arthur is the person we really want to be, like how Arthur is the person we want to be, like the main person we support.
Right. That's pretty clear from the whole situation. Like, he's the most relatable, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of people reading this that are like, oh, if the plans were on display, I mean, it's really Arthur's fault. Like,
yeah. No one's really rooting. It is actually quite good at setting up the rest of the universe about Beetlejuice and everything. Like the song about they would sing in the mines about Old Jank Spirit. Old Jank Spirit also is like a part of like a very like a cultural thing in like that area of space. Right. Here it says it was served in the Mandarite mining belts in the star system of Orion Beta. The chapter does seem to be quite good at establishing the world and the characters and how the book will deal with, I guess, with certain situations, like someone's house being knocked down. But also, it's quite good at introducing the characters. I think Arthur gets like the first paragraph to himself pretty much, but then it feels like, from what I remember, like every character gets at least like a somewhat decent description, but it feels like Ford gets like, it feels like a whole page.
He
gets like a page and a half of introduction.
I mean, that's the thing about Arthur is meant to be sort of the audience insert in a way. He's just sort of a bland, like, everyman kind of character.
Yeah, like this could have happened to anyone.
Yeah, so thing. It makes sense he requires less description because you're familiar with, if it's someone that's basically supposed to relate to you, then the author doesn't need to waste time explaining who you are.
Yeah, and I like how his job description is just, it's more interesting than, it's more interesting than you think it is, which, because it just says he worked in the local radio, and that doesn't really give much of anything.
And I feel like that's a somewhat a reference to the original publish of this, which was originally a radio show before it was a novel.
Yeah, it was a radio show, and then it became a book.
Right.
It's just kind of weird to think how it would be a radio show first, but I think they still play it on BBC Radio 4, not a Spawn, from time to time.
Yeah.
I think the most recent one is the Hexagon series, or something like that. I forgot. I kind of half was listening to it in the car, a couple months back, but yeah.
And I guess in that way you could argue that Arthur is a bit of a self-insert for Douglas Adams, in that, he was working at the radio, writing the radio show for this, about a character who has a job in radio. Although you could make the same argument for Ford, because when he was younger, he used to hitchhike a lot, So,
yeah. Oh, which I guess the book
which I guess relates to Ford, as you know, he's mentioned he knows how to signal spaceships and get lifts.
Yeah, like how it always talks about him looking in the air for. And then whenever people ask him, he says flying saucers, which people think he's joking, but he's actually genuine.
He's being serious.
He's like being 100%.
They've established he doesn't really understand sarcasm too well. Like, he's not joking.
Yeah. Or sometimes when he's really concentrating. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's chapter 1. Unless you had any more notes you wanted to go over.
Oh, I did like the whole thing about like the house. That was quite funny as well. Like the windows set in the front of a size and proportion which more or less exactly failed to please the eye. Which is quite funny. I guess that's also quite a humorous part. I guess it also adds to like the importance of this house to Arthur, not because it's like, I guess he lives in it, but it's like, even though it's like hideous and in the way, it's like, oh, it kind of makes you sympathize more for him.
Yeah, it's establishing it's kind of a plain house.
Yeah,
Arthur's
it's just
not
a house.
Some rich snob with a mansion that's like right in the way.
He's just a house that happens to be in a field.
Yeah.
Where they want to build a road.
Oh, I was gonna say about, so like self-insert type characters are pretty common. Like another good example would be like Lord of the Rings and like The Hobbit and stuff. You see, you can kind of see like Bilbo, especially, feels very much like Tolkien, and that he's just like, you know, the Shire is very similar to like just England and whatnot. And he's like, he's writing this book about his journey. Yeah, it's like, that's very clearly like the author, you know, is also writing a book.
Yeah.
But I think it's easy to write a character that's like relatable to yourself, because that's what you're familiar with. And I think that's where some of the best characters come from, because it's more genuine. You don't have to do a lot of like making stuff up, because you can just you know that character already because it's you.
Yeah, it's not like those books where it's like I guess like those books where you can clearly tell it's like a 50-year-old writing a book for teenagers. It's like,
like
stop.
Some old man heard that vampires were zeitgeisty, and they were like, oh, let's just write some thing about some edgy vampire or something. It's like, no, it's gotta be something you can relate to and like really understand.
Yeah. Actually, I do want to add, I do like how it sets up the whole thing of it. It's just his morning routine, and then he just realizes that there's a giant bulldozer outside his house, and he just goes and lies down. Like it talks about him waking up, brushing his teeth, and then there's like the word bulldozer kind of phases through his head, and then after he's eaten, got dressed and everything, he goes just and he lies down.
Or was it yellow?
Yeah, it's bulldozer, then bulldozer again, then yellow again.
Yeah, and he's like trying to remember.
And then he just keeps instead of remember, like he just remembers being just incredibly drunk and talking about being sad about something. Then he comes to the realization it was about a bypass. I mean, he said, well, the council doesn't have a leg to stand on, so it'll sort itself out. And then he was like, oh wait, hang on. And then he has to go outside.
Yeah, obviously it wasn't sorting itself out.
Yeah. Well, it was sorting itself out, but not in his favor.
Yeah. I like that the guy who gave him the notice as well cleaned his windows. And
oh yeah.
Got $5 off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, oh, well, because he was, I thought he was the window cleaner. Yeah, it does kind of, yeah, but yeah, I think words. Yeah, no, chapter 1 is quite good. But yeah, I think this has been a good first installment for the MBBC.
Right.
But yeah, this should be good to read together, because it seems that we both like the humor and the how the author writes it. So yeah, it's probably, yes, yeah.
All right. So until we read the next chapter.
Yeah. Until then.